Good morning to you, and welcome back to today's JRPG Weekly-ish update. I am SuperDerek, and guys, I missed you last week. I hope you missed me too. Anyways, hey guys, yeah, last week I did not release a JRPG Weekly update because it didn't seem like really much had happened. At least not really much that got me excited, and I figured, hey, if none of this is getting me excited, it's probably not going to excite any of you guys either, so I decided to go ahead and set aside that day to work on other stuff, which you will see this week, I do believe, and I'm pretty excited. But before we get to that stuff, we've got some new games and ports to talk about here. Let's start off with a port of an action RPG, a side-scrolling action RPG called Minoria, which is coming to consoles here pretty soon. The game is a successor to the Momodora series, and that will feature very similar gameplay if you're familiar with those games. The game is currently already available on Steam, so if you want to check this out and play it on consoles, you can do so on September 10th, and it's going to cost about $20. Also, Oceanhorn 2, the Knights of the Lost Realm, is going to be getting a port to the Nintendo Switch. Now, that game is currently available on the Apple Arcade, but who wants to play it on that? This is a very Zelda-inspired series, very similar to Wind Waker, at least the very first one was. I haven't seen much of the second, but it looks to be still in that same vein, so I think I would still prefer to play that on a Nintendo Switch over an iPad or something, right? But that's going to be coming out on the Switch in fall of 2020. No real exact date has been given yet. Now, we did get some release date updates to go over, starting with, do you guys remember this one? The Chinese developer MiHoYo, they've announced a release date for their game called Genshin Impact. And Genshin Impact, if you're not familiar or if you don't remember, it's that controversial game that's made by the Chinese developer MiHoYo, which is, let's just say it borrows very heavily from the aesthetic of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, if that bothers you or not, I don't know. It doesn't really bother me all that much, but it did bother some people last year who at a Sony convention ended up smashing a PlayStation 4 over it because of how upset they were that the Chinese developers were blatantly ripping off such a iconic and an amazing Nintendo series. So that should catch you up. The game's coming to PC, iOS, and Android on September 28th, and other console versions of the game coming to PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch are expected to follow this fall. Also, indie strategy RPG Tears of Avia is coming to Xbox One and Steam. It's originally expected to launch in late 2019, but it finally got a new release date, that being September 24th of this year. Also, Mortal Shell, that game ended up launching digitally last week. However, that game is still getting a physical release that has not came out yet. They've announced that will be coming out physically and on discs and such on October 2nd of this year. Now, Mortal Shell has been generally well received so far as being a pretty good attempt at being a newcomer to the Souls-like genre. The physical releases are going to cost about $30, and they're going to contain a poster as well as like a soft cover art book, which is really cool because you don't really get that very often with games releases these days. Like, they barely come with a manual these days. Most of them don't even bother to do that. So it's really cool to see that, this game is going to be coming with some feelies, and it's only going to cost, half as much as like a AAA release. The PC is also getting a physical release. It's getting a box, basically. But that box is going to come without a disc in it. It's going to contain, the poster, the art book, and a download code that you can redeem at the Epic Games store. So you may not want to pick up the PC release physically, or maybe you do, I don't know. It's an option, just keep that in mind. Now, also, we got a delay notification of Dungeon of Nilbuk. I'm going to pretend I said that correctly, and that's been pushed back from its expected launch date of the 27th, so it was expected to come out later this week. That's been delayed until September 17th, though. The publisher decided that they needed to give it a little bit more polish, which is pretty fine by me. This is that Western-style kind of parody RPG. It looks really interesting, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play when I do eventually get my hands on it at some point. But this game is coming to Steam, the Epic Game Store, and Good Old Games. So take your pick. Unfortunately, none of those picks can be consoles yet. Now that brings us to SuperDerek news this week. And last week I released my very first, what I call visual audiobook. I don't know if that's even a thing, but basically I recorded an audiobook, and I wanted to record that audiobook for some viewers of me over on Twitch, because they're like, oh, you should make an audiobook. I was like, hey, that'd be pretty fun. Well, then they voted to make it publicly available to other fans of like the Trails series. And I said, okay, well, let's do that. But if I push it over to YouTube, I would want there to be some sort of visual component of that to take advantage of it being a video platform, right? So I added some visuals to help kind of sell that. You know, I feel like sometimes when you're listening to an audiobook, you don't really know what to do with your eyes. And that's coming from a huge fan of audiobooks. So I wanted to kind of put something on there that would enhance the experience even further. And then I added some sound effects and some other things that just kind of made it more of a production, I think. At least that was the attempt. And so far it's been pretty well received over there. Now, if you're not already familiar with the Trails games and don't know what Carnelia is, it's the set of 11 missable, optional, collectible books within Trails in the Sky first chapter. It doesn't contain any spoilers of the games. It is kind of in fact supposed to be a like a fictional book series that you can collect in the game and just kind of read and enjoy. It's very much like a noir mystery novel with some kind of action components in it that makes it really fun. I had a lot of fun with it. You don't really need a whole lot of pre-existing knowledge of the game to enjoy it, and it doesn't spoil the game. So if you're interested in hearing I think a really interesting story read by yours truly, then go check it out. It may be possible that I'll explore doing something similar for other in-game books down the road, or, you know, I don't know. We'll see. I just kind of want your feedback. What do you guys think of that? Now it is time for an update on Eiyuden Chronicle. And if you guys somehow haven't already heard about Eiyuden Chronicle, that is a spiritual successor of Suikoden being made by each of the writers and directors of every mainline Suikoden up to this point. The guy who made Suikoden what it is today, Murayama, he wrote the original Suikoden 1 and 2, and I believe he even wrote 3 with the help of Junko Kawano, who is also involved, and then other entries later on, like the director of that, he's also involved. It's really, really exciting stuff. Anyways, they're entering their final week on Kickstarter, which had an initial goal of about $500,000. And as of right now, they're just shy of 3.5 million. And I think if you haven't already backed this, you should. If you're a Suikoden fan, if you're not a Suikoden fan, you know, whatever. But I feel like a lot of you guys out there probably are. And it looks amazing. They've been releasing some more information about this. They've hit several stretch goals. They've released some new videos. Apparently these are actually in-engine videos. It's really, really impressive. It's kind of like the art style of Suikoden meets the aesthetic of Octopath Traveler, and it just blows my mind, man. They've already got well over 100 heroes unlocked so far with all these Kickstarter stretch goals. They've unlocked a lot of mini games, like a detective agency. There's so many like little things that they're doing, and I really hope that we can honestly, I really hope that they can hit 4 million. I don't even know why I want them to hit 8 times their original goal, but I hope that they do. And I hope that you guys can help them. If you haven't already, I'm going to put a link to their Kickstarter down below. Make sure you check that out because, yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. Now, it is time for this week's JRPG Weekly forecast. And this week's forecast is going to start off on August 25th with the release of No Straight Roads, which is kind of an interesting looking action adventure rhythm game where you play as a rock duo who are fighting against EDM for the freedom of music. It's just kind of an insane little off-the-wall thing. I think it looks really neat. It's coming to all current gen consoles here on the 25th. Also on the 25th, Death End Request 2, which is an RPG from Compile Heart that is also coming to PC and PlayStation 4. Moving on into August 27th, we can expect some Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered to be coming to Nintendo Switch, PS4, and iOS, and also a light drizzling of Moon Remix RPG Adventure, the anti-RPG. Again, I will link to Daria's video explaining why this is such an interesting video game to finally be coming out in the West. And this is coming to Nintendo Switch. Again, that's on the 27th. Moving into August 28th, Nexamon Extinction, that Pokemon-inspired monster catching game with over 300 monsters to catch and train. That's coming to Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Also on the 28th, you can see some Wasteland 3 moving in from the east. See, get it? It's a forecast. The latest entry in the Western CRPG series that actually inspired the Fallout series. That's coming to PlayStation 4, PC, and Xbox One. Following that, we'll be seeing Windbound, which is an action-adventure game that appears to be inspired by both Breath of the Wild and Wind Waker. That's going to be coming to Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. And then wrapping out the week with Liege Dragon, a Kemco RPG. All of these, again, coming out on August 28th. This one's coming to Xbox One, and not much else yet. And that leaves us with today's question of the week. And my question for the week is, in itself, asking you 4 questions for me to ask, because I'm being given an opportunity to inquire to the developers of Eiyuden Chronicle any 3 questions. I'm going to submit to them some questions, and the developers are going to respond to them, and I don't really know what to ask. So I'm going to pass that question back to you. What would you most like if you could ask any single question? I'm just going to ask you to submit one question. If you could ask one question to Murayama, to Junko Kawano, or Osamu, anybody, if you could ask them one question, what would it be? And also, after you're done submitting your question, make sure to read through other questions and give a like to the ones that you most want to have responded to. Because the top 3 answers, I think I'll be getting some answers for them. So, make sure you leave your question down below. Super exciting opportunity. God, Rabbit and Bear Studio, I'm so hyped for them. I hope you guys are too. And following getting some responses to them, I suspect I'll be making another follow-up video this week, going over the answers. So, and now it's time for everybody's favorite part of the video, where I ask you to make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, and to ring that bell if you want to, and then spin around 3 times, spit in your hand, and clap yourself on the back in order to make sure you get the notifications from YouTube when my videos go live. And anyways, guys, thanks for hanging out. I will see you guys next time. I am SuperDerek, and this has all been news to me. Have a great week, everybody.